You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Don't look at my teeth, look at his teeth. This is a fossil whale, or the skull of a fossil whale, found in Mississippi. And the man who's involved with finding these things, including this one in the state of Mississippi, is with us today on the show, and it's fascinating. He is James Starnes, research geologist, here with us today on the podcast.
Mississippi Outdoors is sponsored by Entergy Mississippi. Entergy is building a stronger and cleaner grid to power a brighter future and protect our great outdoors for generations to come.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Today with us, James Starnes, geologist for the state of Mississippi, research geologist. James, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed watching you unpack, and you and Chip set all of our show and tell items up. You brought a whole basket full of goodies for us today.
Yeah, I got the whole state here when it comes to our fossil resources. So,
yeah, it's really cool. And before we go too far, I was kind of reading about you, and I saw that acronym MDEQ. Mm-hmm. So for those listening that were like me and didn't necessarily at the outset know what MDEQ stood for, what are we talking about?
We're the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, and we're an office underneath the MDEQ. We're actually a research organization that predates MDEQ and actually most state organizations. We're the Mississippi Office of Geology, which is the state geological survey. Most of all other 50 states have a state survey. And our job is the geological resources of the state. And we've been around since 1850, one of the older surveys in the country. We were around long before the Civil War and all that other stuff. And we've survived in various aspects over different times. We were originally with Ole Miss in our early days, and we were doing geological county bulletins. We were actually doing ecology and plants and all kinds of different things. So the geological survey is not just the rocks and the fossils. We also deal with ecology and eco-regions, and we work with our state's biologist over at the Natural Science Museum. We also work with folks like U.S. Fish and Wildlife and National Forest Service and all these other different folks who take an interest in the resources that we produce. We're one of the few research agencies under MDEQ. MDEQ is largely a regulatory agency, but geology is the basis of the environment, and so having that understanding helps us kind of understand how we regulate our resources.
And looking at some of the things that you brought, some of the cool stuff that's on the table. And for those listening that can't see it, we'll talk about some of that. But looking at it is a great indication of kind of what you're involved in, hands-on with, literally and figuratively. But describe it for us. A research geologist in the state of Mississippi, kind of what do you do? What does that job entail?
I still don't know the absolute boundaries of the definition of that quite yet. I've been working for 28 years for the state survey, and it's always something new. There's always something to be discovered. There's always a resource that's of interest, either for conservation or, we do mine things in the state of Mississippi. So knowing where those resources are incredibly important. Our state's geology is really, really unique in the fact that we're a coastal plain state, entirely coastal plain. Louisiana also shares that, but you get into Alabama, they get into mountainous regions here. Mm-hmm. So the geology of the state is made up of alternating sand, silts, and clays. There's a geological map behind me. The oldest geology that we have is in the northeastern part of the state. So basically what it is a record, the different layers is a record of the Gulf filling up over time. And how we figure out what was going on in the environments and all that other stuff, the fossils are really, really important tools for us, because we need to know, how these geological layers are put together, the environments that they're deposited in, the time that this stuff represents. These are all important for us to kind of put this puzzle together. And so we read the geological layers much like a person would read a book or a novel. Okay. And we use all these clues where the paleontology is really the key player here in understanding where we are in environment, where we are in time, what is going on Earth at this time. So, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at the map, and you mentioned the northeast part of the state.
Yep.
The oldest record there that why?
Okay. The oldest part of the geology we have there is you're basically at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains.
Okay.
Now, it's the Tennessee River that cuts down to it, but the time up there, once you get into Tishomingo County, up to the very, very northeastern part of the state, around Pickwick Lake and, of course, Tishomingo State Park and that area up the Trace, everybody knows that that is a very, very unique part of the state who's been there.
Right.
You know, the Tishomingo State Park is one of our most iconic parks. It just has to do with the rocks and the geology. You're not actually going up in elevation like you would climbing up into the mountains, but you're actually going down in elevation where the river has cut down, exposing these really, really old rocks. So,
wow, I don't think a lot of people realize that. I wouldn't have thought of it that way.
Yeah, it's actually the valley of the Tennessee River. It makes that kind of hook into the corner of Mississippi, and those rocks up there are hundreds of millions of years old. Now, the rocks that are just south of there. There's a big gap in time there. So we're missing some time there. From there on throughout the prairie region of northeast Mississippi is a time called the Cretaceous. Okay. And that is the last days of the dinosaurs. So about the last 25 million years of the days of the dinosaurs.
Okay. Now, you can see me. I'm over here. I got sparks flying trying to put because I saw this story. Chip sent it to me. You were coming in from April of this year. It says geologists find the fossil of a stunning 30-foot sea dragon in Mississippi. And I read, and it said Starkville.
Yep.
So 30-foot sea dragon, Starkville. Tell me about that.
All right. So to have a sea dragon, you have to have a sea, right?
Right.
Okay.
You'd think.
Yeah. So if anybody's been up to Starkville area and you get out on a roadside, you can pick up these seashells.
Right.
They're iconic. All right. This is an extinct oyster called Zygorhiza, okay? And it only lived during the Cretaceous period, okay? And so Mississippi was covered in ocean during that time. I'll pass it to you there. Okay. Now, the cool thing is that is the original shell material of that animal. So that particular shell is about 80 million years old. But once you get into around the Starkville area, you're looking around between 60 and 70 million years old. So the last part of the Cretaceous. And it's an oyster.
And it was underwater.
It was underwater. And a very tropical sea. So the oceans covered much of the state during this time period, and after that time period, the state was covered in ocean periodically. So as the state receded, as the oceans receded, the state created more land, more geology, and each time the ocean rose, it rose less and less over the state to where the Gulf is today.
Okay,
and so that's kind of a cool area, Starkville, because you've got not just the Cretaceous seas with all those wonderful fossils, including the mosasaurs in there, but you've also got a time that represents the death of the dinosaurs. So we actually have a layer there that records when the dinosaurs were wiped out. And most kids know about this, but not most adults. And the kids know more about dinosaurs than just about anybody, as you know. But there was a meteorite that hit the Yucatan Peninsula, so down here in the Gulf of Mexico. And the fallout from that giant rock falling from space is what wiped out the dinosaurs. And we have a record of that right there in the Starkville area, actually on Mississippi State University campus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I found those. Of course, you see them everywhere.
Exactly.
Especially in that part of the. So, and even where I live in Tupelo, in our neighborhoods, you see
and that's getting a little bit older, but still the same Cretaceous. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. All right. So I feel like I'm kind of burying the lead just a little bit, especially for those that are watching the video of this podcast, because sitting next to me is something that is a skull. It is massive and it has a lot of sharp teeth. What is that?
Okay, that is our official state fossil, and that is called Zygorhiza. It is actually a primitive fossil whale, so it's a mammal, where our mosasaurs up in northeast Mississippi from the days of the dinosaurs, they're the ones who filled that niche during this time period. And then, so during the Cretaceous, these were the animals that were the big sea dragons of the ocean. And they were very, very diversified. I got a few teeth I'll show. But later on, after these animals died out, other animals came to fill that niche. And so it was separated by several million years. You had land animals that were going back to the ocean to fill these niches of these top predators, and we ended up with these toothed whales. And so that is those come out of the Yazoo clay. That specific specimen right there is out of Yazoo County.
Okay,
and that is our official state fossil, is the fossil whale.
Now, did you find this?
No, but I have found several of them. We're actually going back Friday to look for a much larger one that we excavated a partial skeleton of just a couple weeks ago. I've excavated juvenile and adult specimens of this type of animal out of Scott County, in Yazoo County, and even here in Hinds County.
Very, very cool. And so the one that you held and showed us as an example, is that an example of what the story was that was found in Starkville when it said sea monster? Is that what we're talking about?
And these are the mosasaurs. So these are the sea dragons that lived during the Cretaceous. I think that there's a dinosaur movie coming out. There's like the next Jurassic Park. That big monster animal that's just rising up out of the ocean, that's going to be one of these giant mosasaurs. Now, mosasaurs were several different shapes and several different sizes. They diversified in all the different ocean environments, from big lumbering animals that were swimming in the open ocean to very, very shallow marine animals that were more like dolphins today, that were very, very fast and very agile. And they also adapted to different environments as well as far as what they're eating. Here is a mosasaur tooth of the giant mosasaur, Mosasaurus hoffmanni, which is the vertebra that we found up near Starkville when we were geologically mapping the Bluff Lake Quad, and that is just south of Starkville, over there at the Noxubee Refuge. And so we were looking at those same deposits that go just north up through Starkville. That is a tooth of one of those animals.
Yeah, that's a pretty good sized tooth.
Yes, these were definitely the apex predators of the ocean. There were some sharks there, and there were some big sharks there, but these guys ruled the roost of the oceans at the time.
This may be a silly question, but you hand me something that's that old. I feel like I should handle it with care. I don't want to drop it. Would it break? But it's also very sturdy. Do I have to treat it like it's a piece of glass, or is it?
No. That's actually a very, very sturdy fossil.
I don't handle a lot of fossils, that from dinosaurs and things that are prehistoric. I didn't know if I could handle it easily or if I had to worry about dropping it. I just didn't know.
Some of the fossils that we do have are extremely delicate.
Okay.
I mean, they literally fall apart in your hands. And some of these things we actually, when we find them, we have to glue in places we're excavating them because they're so delicate.
Okay.
Teeth, in generally, not always, but teeth pretty much most often are pretty durable. And they're actually the things that survive mostly in the fossil record.
So teeth, again, my light bulb goes off because up north of where I live in Tupelo, and between there and Booneville, there's a spot. I think there might even be like like one of those type of historical type markers where a creek there at Guntown goes right under Highway 45. And I've heard stories of people going and finding teeth there for years and years, still going. There's a local club that, they take kids there and have trips, and you know where I'm talking about?
Yeah. This is up near Booneville, and it is the Frankstown fossil site. Officially, it is the W.M. Browning fossil site. Okay. And this was set aside it's one of our first places that is for public fossil collecting. The public can go any time of year, any time of, as long as the creek's not high. But right. there's nobody who is monitoring, this. School kids go on their own. I've taken Mississippi State University, Jones Junior College classes out there to fossil collect and teach. And at the same time, you've got a group of school kids from say the Tupelo area, that are 5th and 6th graders out there collecting the same fossils. That was set aside when they were building, the highway up through there. I guess that's 45. Yeah, Highway 45 up through there. And you can't over collect it. We do have a fossil guide that the North Mississippi Gem and Mineral Society prints that we produce that's available online in our circulars publication. And it's basically a fossil guide of the different types of fossils that can be found up there. Now, dinosaur teeth have been found up there and dinosaur bones have been found up there. But we're actually working on another fossil site with the city of Columbus, where it's not just dinosaur age fossils like shark's teeth and mosasaur teeth and then seashells from that time period, but actually collecting dinosaur bones, where people can go and collect their own dinosaur bones. It's our richest dinosaur fossil site we have in the state, which is just off of downtown Columbus, right off Luxapalala Creek at Prost Park. And we're working with the city, we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers, we're working with our several partners to have a second fossil public collecting place. And this gets folks and kids interested in adults alike, in our our state's geological history and its natural resources.
That's really fascinating and a really cool thing on the horizon for you and for citizens. You mentioned the North Mississippi Gem and
Mineral Society.
Easy for me to say, but you work closely with them and have worked with them.
I work closely with them. They were actually a huge advocate of ours. We actually have a Mississippi Gem and Mineral Society that is here in the Jackson metro area, the Central Mississippi Gem and Mineral Society. And all these societies are affiliated with each other. Okay. They're just kind of regionally spaced, which is great. We actually have a Gulf Coast one as well. They're a little smaller, but they're pretty active. And it's through these societies, these folks that are interested in the geological resources, that we get a lot of our information, and they're also part of our educational outreach network. They were hugely helpful with. Most recently, we worked with our state legislature with an opal find in Claiborne County that you might have heard of, and we now have. They were instrumental in helping us, kind of push this through. To have a state gemstone. Wow. And so we had found that originally doing geological mapping in Claiborne County, but they got behind it, full throttle. And we worked with our First Lady, Ely Reeves, as well as our state legislature. And we have an official state gemstone now.
The opal.
So, But North Mississippi Gem and Mineral Society, their place of where they meet is at the Orendon Museum there in Tupelo. And one of the few places that the opal is on display, semi-permanent display, is up there at the Orendon Museum.
Very cool.
So y'all check it out.
How about that? I'll go home and go see it tomorrow if I can. All right. And again, I'll let time get away from me if I'm not careful. Tell me about some of the things that you brought. And I know that's really open-ended, but we got a lot of cool stuff on the table. So kind of pick and tell and show.
All right. This is really important. We just had the kids up at this fossil site up in northeast Mississippi. This is from Tippah County.
Look at that.
And that's an ammonite.
Ammonite.
So it looks like a snail, but these are actually relatives of squid and octopus that had shells. Their modern relatives are the pearly nautilus. But you see the mother of pearl on that shell?
I do see it. Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed.
Okay. The reason that our fossils are so important isn't just the fact that we have a lot of fossils in this state. It's how they're preserved. That right there is a nearly 70 million year old seashell that is the original shell material. And that gets repeated over and over and over again in older and younger deposits throughout our state. Okay. The oyster shell that you picked up there from the Starkville area, that's the original shell material of that animal.
And why is that important?
Well, locked in there, you've heard about folks taking ice cores and seeing how the climate has changed in the past from the end of the last ice age to modern times. Okay. Well, ice cores are only going to get us so far. When you've got the preservation that we've got here in Mississippi as far as our fossils, in there are chemical signatures. And we're able to unlock those chemical signatures about what we call the paleo environment, the ancient environment. And so we're able to get oxygen isotopes that are recorded in those shells. We can get seawater temperatures. We can get salinity. All of those things, oxygen isotopes, all of those things are recorded in these shells, just like they are a modern shell from the beach, because they're just like a modern shell from the beach. They're fossils, but they're not fossilized and not been replaced with mineral. It's the original shell material. So we have this huge amount of paleoclimatical data. I know that's a big word, but that is what the climate was like at the time. So we've got the animals that lived there, but we've also got recorded in their shells what that climate was like. Okay. Now we take a fossil that's similar from a bed above and below that, and then continue to do that in either direction. Now we can understand our geology and how the climate has changed over millions and millions of years, the same way we would unlock an ice core. Yeah. And now we've got that information. There's very, very few places in the world that is possible, and Mississippi is one of those few places.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, so to interpret that layman's terms, there are puzzle pieces here,
yes,
in terms of understanding this in Mississippi that very few other places in the world have.
Yep. And so the work that is done here helps describe what's going on in the rest of the world.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I recognize the mammoth.
Yes.
Why is he here?
Okay, the mammoth is actually one of our more recent finds. It's known from a handful of teeth here, but there's two finds here most recently. One is an entire tusk that we dug last summer near Livingston, Mississippi, in Madison.
Yeah,
and
not far from where we're sitting here.
we had a 7-foot mammoth tusk, and I was talking about the earlier when we were talking before about the public and how important the public is, to our understanding. We do find these things when we're out mapping and working and all that, but we're a very, very small office, and we cover the whole state. So it's the public who brings things to our attention is how a lot of these discoveries really do happen. And it was an individual by the name of Eddie Templeton. He is an environmental engineer in Madison County. He's a big fossil hunter and is a huge contributor to the Natural Science Museum as far as specimens, but not just that, his local knowledge of areas. And we ended up digging a 7-foot mammoth tusk out of a creek bed in about this time of year in the heat in Madison County. But that's the first tusk of this animal that we have ever found, and there's a reason for that. Here is a mammoth tooth. Let you show that. That's one tooth. Okay.
Night. Good night. The size and the weight of
this
that
thing. Yeah, and that's a cast. So the real one actually weighs a lot more.
Okay, but that's what one mammoth tooth looks like.
One mammoth tooth, yeah.
And it's just hard to imagine if you've never held it in both of your hands, just to imagine it's one tooth and then a mouthful of those.
But it's not our only elephant. And I'm going to get to this. This is not our only elephant. We also have this elephant, which is the mastodon.
Okay.
Okay. And so these two elephants live side by side at the end of the last ice age here in Mississippi. Now, this animal is a grazer. You can see the flat tooth right here.
Yeah.
This animal is a browser like a deer.
Okay.
So the environments that they lived in were completely different. So these are open grassland animals, and these animals can live just like a deer pretty much anywhere in the state. So this was actually found on the Jackson Prairie of central Mississippi, which is the outcrop of the Yazoo Formation. And finding these animals in these environments help us reconstruct these environments. Yeah. But our first real big vertebrate fossil actually came from an individual by the name of Cole Moody. And he was a biology student at the USM Coast Campus. And he had found some seashells, and it's seashells that we don't find in that area today. So we got really excited and real interested. Mm-hmm. And he showed up here just a few weeks ago with a partial tooth just beneath the waves at low tide, right off of Long Beach. A mammoth tooth.
Off Long Beach?
Off Long Beach.
Wow.
So you can imagine that at the height of the last ice age, so when you had saber-toothed cats and all that other stuff running around, giant ground sloths and mammoths, sea levels were a lot lower than they are today. So much of Mississippi was a lot bigger because much of the shelf was actually exposed. The sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are today. And now we know what that environment was like because now we're finding mammoth teeth. It's the first big vertebrate fossil that we've ever found or ever recorded. He found it in the Gulf Coast region. So now we know that out there beyond the waves, where the barrier islands now and even further, you could have mammoths roaming around on an open grassland.
All right. There's something over there that from a distance, it almost resembles the shape of a pair of needle-nose pliers. What am I looking at right there?
All right, this is the tooth of the larger version of that.
Of this, okay.
So the Zygorhiza, the skull here, is the smallest of these fossil whales. Just like the mosasaurs in the Cretaceous, when these animals went back to the ocean, these mammals went back to the ocean, and they diversified. They inhabited all types of different environments, and this is the cheek tooth of Basilosaurus. Okay. And Basilosaurus, if you've been to the Natural Science Museum, it's the big thing hanging from the ceiling from end to end. That's based on a specimen we dug out of Scott County, Mississippi, near Lake. And that is the most, that specimen we excavated is about 90% complete. It's the most complete of that animal we have. And that is just one of the cheek teeth. So, I mean, this animal was ferocious. I mean, it's got teeth on its teeth.
So it's one tooth.
Yes.
But it's right. It's got teeth on teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is incredible.
So ferocious predator.
Well, it's just incredible, again, to look at the size of one tooth and then you see little teeth on top. It's almost like something Hollywood would come up with.
Yeah.
And you found one 90% complete in Lake, Mississippi, and you can go see it right now at the Museum of Natural Science. Is that where most of these things come from? Like when you brought them here today, they're housed at the museum?
Yes, the museum is the repository for a lot of our field research. We work very, very closely with the curator there, George Phillips. Most of the time that I'm in the field or he's in the field doing research, when outreach, we're usually on our different directions trying to cover the whole state. But no, we work side by side, and they're the repository for a lot of the things that we do. Now we drill cores and things like that, and we have other types of collections, soil sample collections, dirt collections from our field work. We take electrical logs, which is basically digital readings down boreholes that we use to divide up what we can't see on the surface. Those we house, and we house those over at our West Street office, and we have like two look like airplane hangars that are literally full of rock. But we've been massing that collection for a long time. And, when people come to study our geology, that's the resources. Just like when people come to study the paleontology, it's the collections there, that stuff that's back in the back. The stuff that's out in front is for show. The really good stuff's out, like I said, out in the back. But that's the research collection.
Yeah.
And we try to have every, working with the museum, we try to have enough stuff out there that represents the whole state, but comprehensively. I mean, it's tens of thousands of specimens, if not hundreds of thousands of specimens that really represent our knowledge of the paleontology of the state.
Very cool. So, back to the mammoth tusk. Cole, you said his name's Cole Moody.
Cole is the one who found the tooth on the coast.
On the coast.
Yeah, Eddie Templeton's the one that found the one in Madison.
Sorry, Eddie. Make sure you get credit, Eddie. So how you said that he finds things and looks for things, but how did he come across and kind of locate this mammoth tusk that's buried in a creek in Livingston? How did he find that?
Well, there's not a place you can go in this state and not find fossils.
Okay.
That's an absolute fact. There's not a place that you can go. You can go into your gravel driveway, and actually, folks pick up gravel fossils that are really, really ancient. And that's kind of their first. The kids come home from the playground. They got a pocket full of rocks that ends up in the washer, and mom gets mad. But most of what those kids are collecting are actually fossils that come from our gravel. But there's certain parts of the state that have certain fossils in them. In western Mississippi, what we call the bluff line, so from DeSoto County in the Lurse Bluff region overlooking the Mississippi River, actually going all the way into Madison County to the east, and then all the way down to Wilkinson County down here, that's all Ice Age deposits. Okay, and in there are saber-toothed cats. We've got giant ground sloths that are very, very common. Dire wolves, of all things. You've heard about somebody trying to recreate a dire wolf. Well, those fossils are actually found here in Mississippi. These were animals that if you walked outside, you would see, including the mammoth and the mastodon and things like that. So he knows, what he's going to encounter when he goes. It's always a discovery. You don't expect to find certain things, especially you'll find a piece of bone here, a piece of tooth there. We actually, that day we excavated that fossil, we were waiting for the plaster to dry on the cast because we had to take it out in one big chunk, and we plastered the thing in just like you see on the National Geographic specials. It's just they don't show those folks sweating. Yeah, it was awful
this
hot
time of year.
Yeah, awful hot. But we were waiting for it to dry, so we decided to explore a little bit. We round the first bend of the creek, and sure enough, he's got a basilosaur vertebra. So a vertebra of one of these guys. Yeah.
In the same place.
In the same place.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So, but the state's covered in fossils from different ages, and it's the creeks that really cut down to expose the geology. That's where we really, really see, everything again covered in grass and trees. So most of the folks that are interested in finding fossils, just like the Frankstown site up in North Mississippi, it's a creek. Mm-hmm. And so most folks get out and they creek walk. And, with a caveat, we are a landowner right state, and you need to knock on doors and get permission from the landowners, but most of the folks do. And the Gem and Mineral Society is really good about working with landowners to have club-sanctioned fossil hunts. But there are places all over the state where just amazing fossils can be found. And Western Madison County, it's a good place.
Did you get the phone call from Eddie? I'm wondering how that sounded.
We're one of my wife refers to it as a fossil emergency.
Okay.
Some of these things have been dead for tens of billions of years. And in this case, something that's dead 20,000 years, but still we get these fossil emergencies. And, they know it's go time. There's a very, very limited time that we've got before these things, the next rain or something will wash it away.
Okay.
Being exposed, some of these things, especially a tusk, will fall apart. We've got a very time limited, but especially certain people, I'll answer to the phone on the weekend. And if they don't get a hold of me, they'll get a hold of one of my colleagues at the office and they'll be able to get a hold of me. But we usually end up back out in the field on the weekends a lot, that's when people are out looking.
Yeah.
And so we end up going out there and recovering as quick as we can.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit, but the process then, I'm just curious, Eddie calls, it's a fossil emergency.
Yep.
Wife and everybody understands. Here we go. The process in the creek, sweating, plaster. Okay, now it's time to go with it. We've got it. Then what? Is it?
All right.
It comes back here. What happens?
Well, that day, starting about that day, I get a phone call from Eddie, and I turn around and I call one of my colleagues that works with me over at the survey, Jonathan Leard, and he's in the middle of mowing his lawn. And we call George over at the museum. He's got to work that Saturday at the museum, so he can't be with us. And so he has everything ready to go for the excavation, waiting at the back dock of the museum. So I go over there, pick up all the supplies we need, and within 45 minutes, we're on site excavating. Now, once we have got these, sometimes it's just one big piece like this, but sometimes it's a whole skeleton. And whole skeletons like the Scott County whale, that took several weeks in the field and several trips back and forth to the museum where we're bringing these things back in these plaster jackets. And we get the soil and everything in there. So everything, because it's easier to work on these bones in the lab than it is to work on them in the field. We've got a temperature, climate controlled. We can take the time on this. So we're just trying to get these things out in bulk where we're not doing any damage to them. Mm-hmm. Well, from there, the reconstruction and some of these things can take several years, the curation process. And, that's where George, his volunteers, and his team really stand out, is that long-term curation of these specimens. And some of these things, like the one in Scott County, the big fossil whale hanging from the ceiling, we're talking 5 years in the laboratory before that was ready to cast.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What, for you personally, James, sense of satisfaction, the sense of purpose in what you do? Like, where do you get that? Where do you get that from?
Well, probably from childhood. Kids are always the thrill of discovery, go explore, go find, all that. And that never gets old. It's the reason that kids are, have dinosaur toys and dinosaur this, that, and the other, and books and that and the other. If you can get them through, kind of the teenage years, once they get to college, we find what things interest us back when we were little. And that's where we find that kind of passion. And, as far as, with geology and with paleontology, that's the thrill of discovery, but not only that, sharing in that knowledge. Because when you see other people get excited about it, that just, that excites you more. If I bring another rock home, my wife will probably kill me. I come home and tell her about stuff. She's like, "Oh, neat, that's cool." She tries to share in it, but like I said, it's a kid in a candy store just about every time we get out in the field or we work with somebody who's found something.
Yeah. Do you remember a moment when you were a kid that was sort of the genesis of this for you, like the aha moment of, you found something, and then the next thing you know, it's a whole life of finding things.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was a kid, I was collecting in the creek, and there was a museum in downtown San Antonio called the Whitty Museum, and it was a kind of a STEM type museum. It had anywhere from cultural stuff all the way through dinosaurs, and had I got to watch the folks behind glass there sit and excavate a dinosaur in the lab, and I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Well, I did find a bunch of funny shaped rocks that I thought were fossils, but there was one fossil in there, and that I took it to the paleontologist there. She's a female paleontologist, and she sat down and oohed and awed on my rock finds. And from there, now I found out later that the things that I found, most of them weren't actually fossils, just funny shaped rocks. But, she was encouraging, and that wanted, I wanted to continue exploring and discovering. And, Libby Hartfield over at the Natural Science Museum, when she was director there, she started the Fossil Roadshow program. And that really kind of gave me an opportunity to be able to do the same thing that lady had done to me, kind of inspiring. And that program's been going on for 20 years now, and it's getting bigger and bigger, where people bring so I'm dealing with little kids that are excited about their little box of rocks, with somebody in their 60s standing behind them excited about their little box of rocks.
That's great. Yeah. The Fossil Roadshow, 20 years plus now.
20 years plus now. And it's usually, I think it's the first weekend in March when that goes on.
Yeah.
But George and I do several Fossil Roadshows throughout the state. It's a chance for us to be able to see what the public is collecting, but not only that, educate the public on their finds. We've got one coming up in September in Franklin County. It was at a library gave us a call, in Meadville, and they were like, "Hey, we'd like a fossil roadshow." And then George and I were expecting maybe 10, 15 people show up, and it's kind of rural down there. It's not an area that is really, really known for its fossils. There are fossils that have been really important fossils that have been found there, but we don't know a whole lot of fossil collectors. Down here in Franklin County, there's some really important fossils that have been found down there, but just not a whole lot. A lot of very, very common things like gravel fossils and stuff like that. So we decided to go ahead and take it on. And as we were unloading the stuff to give the program, it was standing room only.
Wow.
People were coming from Louisiana, Adams County, Jefferson County, all the way from Hattiesburg. We had people from the North Mississippi folks came, all the way down there. And we were literally like this. And I talked for 2 hours straight without an interruption, with a line behind me with people with their boxes of rocks. We're going to do it again this year in September, but a bigger venue. One of the Baptist churches, I think it's probably their gymnasium, and we'll probably fill it. Yeah.
That's really cool. Also, I was thinking, Chip, how recently we had a guest, and he was an expert on mushrooms, all the different kinds that are in Mississippi. And within an hour of finishing that podcast, we walked out. Chip and I found a mushroom in the parking lot. We were taking pictures, and then the next morning I found some chanterelle mushrooms that we could eat. And I have a feeling that after talking to you, James, I'm going to walk out and I'm going to find shells. I'm probably going to be looking, because now I know they're everywhere. Yeah. That's kind of like you find what you're looking for. But I feel like, talking to you will have that effect on me. And I think it probably does on other people as well. And
that's the hopes. Yeah.
Yeah. They walk out and start looking around, and it's all around us.
We're always learning, and like I said, the public is the big source of that information to do a lot of our science and understand our state's history. And we're always learning something new. There's always new finds. There's always new professional papers we're working on. And I talked to the New York Paleontological Society. They found out about the mosasaur, and their home is the American Museum of Natural History. And I did a remote talk to their program. So Little Mississippi down over here to the New York Paleontological Society that next Sunday afternoon. And they had no idea we had this in our backyards in Mississippi.
How about that? Yeah. Of all the things that we do have to be proud of in the state of Mississippi, particularly kind of outside and outdoors, and add our fossil record to the list of things that we have to be proud of here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really cool. James, it's a real pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
I hope to be able to do this again. Thank you much.
We'll do it again. James Starnes, research geologist for the state of Mississippi, here on the show. Hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you outdoors.